Well, that's the problem. Is it's hard to anticipate what the 2 months are going to bring, but so no, we don't really know what we're packing for. Three friends and I devised a plan to live on just $1 a day ourselves for the next 2 months. We got 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, 3 pairs of boxers, a rain jacket, and a sweatshirt.
Why do it?
I mean, I think it's just an amazing opportunity to learn for myself what it really means to live under $1 a day, which, coming from this reality, I can't really say I have any idea. I love you too.
Sweating like
I
crazy.
think you're sweating because of the heat or your nerves?
I'm nervous. Like the village and the people and those stories.
Pana, eso, bien, gracias. We are headed about 4 hours outside of Guatemala City to a Mayan village called Peña Blanca. We want to study rural poverty because most of the extreme poor live in rural villages and work as day laborers or farmers. In Guatemala, 50% of the population and nearly 75% of Mayans and other natives are living in poverty. Why is it that indigenous people are more likely to be poor here? How do we define who is poor and what is poverty? What does poverty mean beyond this $1 a day statistic? We have no idea what these next 2 months will bring, but these are some of the hard questions we want and need to explore.
Okay, so without further ado, I want to introduce to you our speaker for tonight. She is actually a social worker, and she will let you know what the social worker does and how is it applicable to us. So, guys, please welcome our speaker for tonight, Amber.
Yay! We love it.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay. Okay, so today's topic. Well, Angelo, how long is the presentation allowed to go for? It's like 7 to what time?
Well, it's supposed to be, we can do it an hour, 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, just checking, because I know last time I went a little overtime and I want to make sure I don't.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We can do overtime. Come on, we're in Zoom.
Okay, so it's great to hear from everyone so far, because I can't really see everyone right now. But today, as always, what? Don't know if we'll. I guess we can just skip the icebreaker that I have on here, because it was like a hit or miss situation, and I want to make sure I get over the information that I have in the presentation. So let me just skip that. No. Why are you not starting? Okay, so today's main theme is called perseverance through adversity. And I was trying to come up with a general theme because we wanted to talk about the various current events that have been going on in 2020, with the start of the pandemic and the police brutality and the protests that have erupted around the world, because it wasn't just in Minneapolis or in just America. There were some in Germany, in Paris, I think even in Korea, because there was a map that you could see if you really Googled to see like, oh, which areas had protests pertaining to the George Floyd. So today's topics are really some things that have affected our lives in a great deal and in the world in general. It is not my intention to offend anyone. I'll be talking from a neutral but also narrow viewpoint for today's presentation, because the topic of racism and discrimination is very widespread and connected to different perspectives, groups, and systems. So I couldn't possibly talk all about it in just one presentation. If you feel you have any thoughts or concerns afterwards, feel free to message us. So the next slide or this video would be from the movie Freedom Riders, and I felt would be also another good segue into the topic. And let me know if it's glitchy, and then I'll explain it in the end of what it is.
I can't really hear it. Like,
Okay.
It's glitchy.
Glitchy?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see, maybe if I take off my, because sometimes when I use my headsets, it doesn't allow the audio to go. Can you hear it now?
I can't hear it still.
Well, let me okay, try when she's talking to see if you can hear it. What is this?
Just leave it alone.
Can you still not hear it?
Yeah,
No, I can't hear it.
It's
I
just
can hear
frozen.
it.
It's frozen.
Okay, so I'll just explain it then. Okay. So this scene was a movie from this scene is from the movie Freedom Riders, and it just basically depicts a situation where it's very racially and politically charged, especially in this high school in LA. It started with the drawing of one of the students who is African American, and the drawing, depicted him as having big lips. And the teacher, obviously seeing this, got mad because, well, how many of you seen the movie Freedom Riders?
I have.
Well, obviously Evelyn has. But if not, that's okay. It's still a very good movie. And it's very appropriate, I think, even if you're younger. It's like, it's okay for you to watch, I think. But anyway, the teacher, her dad was in the civil rights movement. So her background, like, obviously she got really mad over this picture because the student, he didn't understand, like how far that drawing meant and what the history. And sorry if that was me. Pretty quiet. Okay. So the point of these drawings was to dehumanize and make fun of the targeted race, because during the Holocaust, people also made these drawings to dehumanize Jews. Instead, they made big noses for them. And so she was just explaining the meaning behind it. And it's very, when you see the scene, it's very emotional and heavy for the students, because when they're outside of school, they have to deal with gangs and violence in their home between, Latinos, Blacks, Cambodians, Chinese, and just, it's all very mixed together, especially during this time, because I think it was in the 1990s.
And it was very like a heavy thing and burden to deal with, especially as a high school student. So everyone was arguing with the teacher. She was arguing with them, and she was trying to find like a common ground to talk to these kids because she did want to change their lives. It wasn't like she didn't know what she was talking about, but at the same time she did, because she didn't realize how extensive or heavy their situation was. And this is also based off a true story. Freedom Riders is actually a book based on the lives of the kids that went to this high school in LA. So it's definitely a good scene to, or movie to watch, because it really gets you thinking. It opens up a conversation. Okay. So that makes me worried, because now the next, there's other videos in this presentation, so I'm hoping they won't be so glitchy. But so with that video, we'll get started with the meat of the presentation. We'll go over the protests, COVID-19, interpretations of these issues. We'll kind of do like a full summary, or to understand what we like got from the presentation, hopefully. And then have an open-ended discussion or question portion. Usually I just, okay, think about this when you're not here. But, if somebody wanted to talk about it, then, sorry, I'm reading the chat. Okay. So we'll try that with the next video. Hopefully it works. So the protests that have ignited 2020 started with the killing of George Floyd, an African-American, by a white police officer, Derek Chauvin, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There were also 3 officers present, and Floyd was being arrested allegedly for using a counterfeit bill at a store. Chauvin used excessive force on Floyd when arresting him by putting his knee on his neck to hold him on the ground. Sorry, when I think about that video, it says screen sharing is paused. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, why does it say screen sharing is paused? Resume share. Okay. Can you still see it? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, they put it, yeah, when you see I don't know how many have actually seen the video. It's not really, well, for me, it wasn't easy to watch, because you can hear his cries saying that I can't breathe. And especially, as a Catholic, we don't want to see anyone else in pain, especially with that brutality. Like, it's so, there's so much injustice in that act, and you can't really do anything about it, because if you you push a police officer, you could go to jail for that. Especially, it's a whole interconnected thing with so many things attached to it. But and so back to the situation, the autopsy report ruled that his death was a homicide because of the pulmonary restriction that they were, putting his knee on his neck. Protests erupted around the world because of this, and it's still ongoing, which, no surprise. And it's even more, it was frustrating, because this is not just an isolated event. You have all these you have all these other individuals that have to deal with this issue. You have other, like Breonna Taylor, or the one from 1990, I think 1990s, Rodney King, and you could see so many similarities, and it makes you wonder how this type of issue is still happening. So, and like, even though it was like almost more than 20 years ago, that something this significant and almost to the same magnitude happened back then, and it still happened to the same degree again. Like, it makes you like frustrated, definitely. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of set off boiling pot, if you use that analogy. It's like still there, racism, discrimination, and then it makes you frustrated because it's like, do you have to have another incident like this again just so there's more awareness to it? Police brutality, racism, discrimination, stereotyping, and biases are very much ingrained into our society, whether we want to admit it or not. We may or may not have faced it head on as much either. If not, if we haven't really realized it, it might be due to our Catholic faith because we know that behavior is wrong. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's how for me personally, like I know it's wrong. Why don't other people know it's wrong? Because Romans 10:12 states, "For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. The same Lord is Lord of all and is generous to all who call on him." When researching for this topic, I found that African Americans are 5 times more likely than are whites to have a public intervention related, to have a police intervention related injury. So that's also like, man, I researched a lot for this presentation just so I wanted to do it justice. But when you read the statistics related to police brutality and African Americans, it's definitely something that's very, I'm trying to find a horrid, egregious, trying to find a word for it, but it's not, like, you can't comprehend that because you're reading the statistics, but you're just like, why is this still happening? And there's a reason for it. There's a history, but we'll get more into that later. Let's see. So imagine having to, when I was reading qualitative data, which is like experiences that people talk about for surveys, one of them said that imagine having to learn how to act a certain way as soon as you see a cop because they already see you as a threat. I mean, over the top mannerisms, yes sir, no sir, to everything they have to say, having your hands out of the window so they can't have a reason to come after you, even though they'll probably come up with one anyway. Another comment was trying so hard not to be seen as a reasonable threat, because that is the one way cops are allowed to engage, if they see you as a reasonable threat. Okay. So again, some of us we can only try to imagine, because when you open up a dialogue between someone that has faced race and discrimination, it can be hard to really have an open conversation because they'll come with the response that we don't understand, and maybe we don't because we haven't faced that. And again, this is a narrow point of view. I know there's racism between Latinos, Asians, and things like that. But again, this is just focusing on this protest and this like viewpoint, because again, if we talked about everything, it wouldn't like be able to be put into this PowerPoint. So in an article I also read, it talked about the correlation between stressors such as police brutality and aspects of African American lives, such as finance, economics, mental and physical health. And when faced with a threat, the body produces hormones and other signals to turn on the systems that are necessary for survival in a short term, right? That's how, our body works, because it's a machine. These changes include accelerated heart rate and increased respiratory rate. So, we're in survival mode. We're trying to see, do we run or do we fight? Because that's instinctual. But when the threat becomes reoccurring and persistent, as is in the case with police brutality, the survival process becomes dangerous and causes rapid wear and tear on body organs and systems. So with that, it can cause a lot of consequences for the body. So deterioration of organs and systems occurs more frequently in Black populations and can lead to conditions such as diabetes, stroke, ulcers. And there was a long list of stuff that the article went really detailed into. And when you go more into this topic, you also see statistics for healthcare and the inequality with that. So that is even like it's a whole other issue with just healthcare alone. And I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but this is a very real issue that many people in older generations might not get or don't want to get. And that's, I mean, I'm not bagging on them or anything. It's just a reason that they might not understand for this boiling pot would be like they don't know the history or like how much it's so ingrained into the system, and there's just so much history to it. And that's why it's not like you can't just get over it. Like you get over like, you know, like, oh, she hit me. Like, you know, you can't just get over that. So hopefully this slide goes to the next video, and the next video will kind of explain racism on a systemic level, if this will move. And hopefully if it works, if not, I'll just explain the video, but let me know if it's glitchy. This is also an image from the Rodney King riots in the 90s. And I found that the images from that riot really mirror the images from the 2020 riots, which is still like, why are we still having to argue over these issues?
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African-American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. you can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
Now, I found that video explained that racism was a systemic issue. That infiltrates various parts of our lives, so it will be more difficult to solve. I once heard that racism is like hot sauce. Sometimes you can't really tell it's hot sauce because it's only like a little bit until the next day, then you understand it's really hot sauce. But then other times it's like, bam, like that's hot sauce, And I think it was like from a comedian, but yeah, he said that he wants to know that it's hot sauce. Like, okay, that's racism, not like the racism that's, kind of like when you make biases, like, oh, you're Chinese, shouldn't you, have an accent or something like that, something, it's turning into being subtle is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes you can't tell, but you should always be on guard so you can help make effective change. But obviously, you guys are still young. I'm not trying to pressure you right now. It's just to be informed. But most of you are already pretty much informed. But when watching this video also, it reminded me of a client that I had worked with. And, I saw very vast differences in how he was dealing with life after incarceration, after he had been in prison for like 10 years versus someone that, he got out of incarceration for 10 years too, who was African American. And the client, he was white. And like within like 2 weeks, he was already, getting a car, getting his ID and all his vital documents that he needed that are typically hard to get when you're out of incarceration. But then with the other client, it was hard for him, just as other clients I had noticed, to get all his ducks in order. Like, it was very hard for him to just get a job, tell someone to give him a chance. And this other client, he was all squared away. And I'm just like, wow, is it really that easy for it's just something to really think about. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. No, not the video again. Okay. So to kind of further scratch the surface of the iceberg that deals with racism and discrimination towards African Americans, I'm going to try to talk about it a little bit. To further explain, we're going to have to go back in time. So slavery, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, guys. Feel free to do so. So slavery existed from 1619 to 1863, and in some places 1865, because some people didn't want to tell them that they were free. Can you believe that? So in I think it was called Juneteenth when they were finally liberated, and someone told them like, hey, you guys are free. And so people now celebrate June 19th as Juneteenth, a holiday where all slaves were finally free. But technically Lincoln only freed slaves in the South or something like that. It wasn't everywhere until the 13th Amendment was official. So now why slavery? Why was it so necessary at the time? Well, in America, cotton was in high demand. It was like the product back in the day. And well, it contributed to the North and South economies and the industrial market that was like booming and made everything, come to fruition. Slave-based agriculture was so profitable, and it left almost no room for other industries to grow. It was also considered a necessary evil, which made people like, oh, okay, I guess it's okay to have it then. Which no, it's not. So now when Lincoln finally freed everyone, it turned everything upside down. The booming economy was, came and shattered because they didn't have it, like no one to tend the fields and to grow the crop that they needed. And so with that, they were trying to find ways to exploit the 13th Amendment. And if you were arrested, you weren't free, so you could be used for labor. And so because of that, then people started arresting freed slaves for the dumbest reasons, like for jaywalking and stuff. So, that's why there was mass arrest to get them back into incarceration. And so with that kind of trickled down throughout time. And that's what caused for mass incarcerations. And now I believe it kind of contributes to the ideology like that. Oh, they primarily, like African Americans are, they go to jail, like that mentality, which like the more you research into it, the more you kind of see how like that got twisted around. And so the 13th documentary on Netflix and now on YouTube, if you want to watch it, it goes more into this and how like the incarceration rate and the war on drugs kind of contributed to the downfall for African Americans, and how politics and the higher ups kind of use that to their advantage to keep putting them down. And so, I was supposed to, sorry, there was another slide, same information I just said. But also another thing that I saw was, well, hold on one moment. Okay. So another thing that I noticed while researching is that a lot of the information and statistics regarding like arrests and stuff for blacks and whites can be inaccurate, because I guess not a lot of cops want to say that they use excessive force on someone that they didn't need to. So that there might be a lot of inaccuracies in that too. So on here, I think it says more whites are arrested, which, I think it is true, but still, like, that was still a comment that I saw that was interesting. And so the next video will kind of go over the psychology of prejudice and discrimination. And let me know if it's glitchy, and if not, we'll just kind of like, wrap a bow on it or something.
In February 1999, 4 New York City police officers were on patrol in the Bronx when they saw a young black man standing on a stoop. They thought he looked suspicious. When they pulled over, he retreated into the doorway and began digging in his pocket. He kept digging as the police shouted at him to show his hands. A few seconds later, the man, Amadou Diallo, a 23-year-old immigrant from Guinea, was dead, hit by 19 of the 41 bullets that the police fired at him. What Diallo was reaching for was his wallet. He was going for his ID as he stood on the steps of his own apartment building. Diallo's story and the officer's fatal prejudgment of him is recounted in Malcolm Gladwell's 2005 study.
I can't hear it.
And the social psychologists whose work he draws upon.
So can everyone else not hear it as well?
I can hear it.
I could hear it.
Okay. Also,
explores Diallo's case as an example of that gray area between deliberate violence and an accident, propagated by non-conscious or implicit biases. The officers did discriminate against Diallo, but the prejudice they acted on may have been driven by something more subtle than simple hatred. And that's an important thing to think about. Yes, there are lots of overtly bigoted people and policies at work all over the world, but what we're interested in today is the more insidious, non-conscious, automatic bias and how it can affect our behavior. The fact is, our implicit biases affect the way we relate to others in a very real way. Our race, gender, age, religion, or sexual orientation can make the difference between whether we get a job or not, a fair paycheck or a good rental, or whether we get randomly pulled over or shot and killed for reaching for a wallet. In the last 2 episodes, we've examined how we think about and how we influence one another, but social psychology is also about how we relate to one another. Like what factors might cause us to help another person, or harm them, or fear them? What are the social and cognitive and emotional roots of prejudice, racism, and sexism? And how do they shape our society? These are some of the aspects of ourselves that are the hardest and most uncomfortable for us to explore, which is why they're so important to understand. We've all been unfairly judged in our time, and let's not pretend that we haven't done our fair share of uninformed judging too. Like it or not, prejudice is a common human condition. Prejudice just means prejudgment. It's an unjustified, typically negative attitude toward an individual or group. Prejudicial attitudes are often directed along the lines of gender, ethnic, socioeconomic status, or culture. And by definition, prejudice is not the same thing as stereotyping or discrimination, although the 3 phenomena are intimately related. People may distrust a female mechanic. That's a prejudicial attitude, but it's rooted in a stereotype or overgeneralized belief about a particular group. Although it's often discussed in a negative way, stereotyping is really more of a general cognitive process that doesn't have to be negative. It can even be accurate at times. Like, I have the stereotype that all crows have wings, injuries and birth defects aside, and that happens to be true. But on the negative end, your prejudice against female mechanics may be rooted in some inaccurate stereotype about women's skills with a socket wrench. And when stereotypical beliefs combine with prejudicial attitudes and emotions, like fear and hostility, they can drive the behavior we call discrimination. So a prejudiced person won't necessarily act on their attitude. Say you believe in the stereotype that overweight people are lazy. You might then feel a prejudiced distaste when you see someone who appears overweight. But if you act on your prejudice and say refuse to hire them for a job or don't let them sit at your lunch counter, then you've crossed over into discriminating against them. The former apartheid system of racial segregation in South Africa, the Nazis' mass killing of gypsies, Jewish people, and other groups, and centuries of bloodshed between Protestants and Catholics are all extreme examples of violent prejudice and discrimination. The good news is that in many cultures, certain forms of overt prejudice have waned over time. For example, in 1937, only 1/3 of Americans said that they'd vote for a qualified woman to be president, while in 2007, that figure was up to nearly 90%. But of course, more subtle prejudices can still linger. In the past, we talked about dual process theories of thought, memory, and attitudes, in that while we're aware of our explicit thoughts, our implicit cognition still operates under the radar, leaving us clueless about its effect on our attitudes and behavior. In the same way, prejudice can be non-conscious and automatic. And I mean, it can be so non-conscious that even when people ask us point blank about our attitudes, we unwillingly or unknowingly don't always give them an honest answer. Do you think that men are better at science than women, or that Muslims are more violent than Christians, or that overweight people are unhealthy? Our tendency to unwittingly doctor our answers to questions like these is why we have the implicit association test, or IAT. The test was implemented in the late 1990s to try to gauge the implicit attitudes, identities, beliefs, and biases that people are unwilling or unable to report. You can take the IAT online and measure your implicit attitudes in all kinds of topics, from race, religion, and gender to disability, weight, and sexuality. It's basically a timed categorization task. For example, the age-related IAT looks at implicit attitudes about older versus younger people. In it, you might be shown a series of faces, old and young, and objects, pleasant.
Okay. It just talked about the test after that, which, you don't even know that. But if you want to, the crash course videos are definitely good things to, like, if you want to learn about something, that's definitely a good way to, especially if you're a visual person. But the video just talked about what the definitions of stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination, and how they're linked to one another, and how stereotypes are kind of like at the root of like how we behave ourselves in a certain way, because it's like an overgeneralized thing overgeneralization of people, which I know I am guilty of, and I'm very much trying to work on that because I didn't even know about that, and now that I do, I'm just like, oh, whenever something happens, I just think, oh, okay, now I just need to work on that. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, and continue to let me know if these videos are glitchy, if to anyone, that way I can like kind of gauge which, maybe it's like a certain video that has too much graphics that like my internet can't process or something, just so I can, give me feedback. So that's good. No, go. Okay. So the next topic is going to go over COVID. And it's not as informationally dense since it's pretty point blank, since it is science-y. Now, Corona is definitely something that has impacted all of us. It's affected our jobs, our schools, how we live day to day, how we operate, just even going outside, what we put on our face. And it's definitely something that, I mean, at least normal people didn't see coming, unless you're very in tune with the news. Then if you are, good for you, stay like that. You can warn the rest of us. So the 5 W's, or at least that's what I like to do with these presentations, so I can get like a good chunk of knowledge for the topic. So for the WHO, the disease is coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, and the virus that causes the disease, I think that's when I was reading. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, or SARS-CoV-2. And they said it was like the SARS or the MERS virus that happened like before, or that's what it's similar to, because it comes from certain animals. And so it obviously causes serious health issues or even death. That's why everyone's freaking out, the pandemic. And 2019 and ongoing, but hopefully they'll make a vaccine soon-ish. And then where it started in Wuhan, China. And so the why. So one of the theories, just like 3 theories I read, I don't know if there's more, but the coronaviruses are a big family of different viruses and can affect different animals. Some experts say that the virus originated in bats, and the virus made the jump to humans at one of the Wuhan's open air wet markets. They are where customers buy fresh meat and fish, including animals that are killed on the spot. And some people think that it's not bats that started it, but from a different animal, since at the time they weren't selling bats or something like that. And in the wet markets, they sell illegal animals as well. So that could also be what caused it. Again, if you want more information on it, there's a ton on the CDC website and other general articles about it, or even peer-reviewed articles. If anyone really, really wants to do any information on it, I would be glad to lend you my college password and things, so you can actually access the database that has all those types of sciencey articles. Okay, so next. So precautions. So everything that's kind of like, I don't know, pushed to the surface now. So there's currently no vaccine, and it's spread mainly person to person. So stay 6 feet. Everyone always like 6 feet. That's all you hear. Wash your hands often for 20 seconds, or sing the birthday song twice. That's what I do. Wear a mask properly, please. None of this. Oh, I wish I had my mask. Wait, maybe I do have a mask somewhere. No? Oh, okay. I thought I had. Oh, yeah.
Do you mean like the wearing it over your nose? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people do this. Or this. Mostly my mom. Like, that's not gonna do anything, guys. me, I know it's uncomfortable and you can't even pass out because I almost did. But you want to keep, if you're sick and you wear a mask, it's like, I forgot what the percentage is. Maybe some of y'all might know that it decreases the chance of you spreading it to another person. So it's like not keeping you-ish safe, but it's keeping more other people safe because you're not like, spreading it. So
Actually, the mask doesn't lower any oxygen levels. They made a study about it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're talking about I'm looking at the A like it like it's you. Sorry. So do you mean like for passing out, right? Like, is that what you mean?
Yeah, the mask is just a filter. This lady got like this thing that they gave you at the hospital. It's like a little thing you put on your finger and it measures how much oxygen is in your body. She did it with the mask, she did it without the mask, a respirator, everything was the same.
See? So now it's just in people's heads then. So like, see, now you have proof that you need to wear a mask properly at all times, please. So next bullet point, clean and disinfect daily and any surfaces that are commonly shared. I know one of ours is obviously the kitchen. So, and my dad is like a germaphobe. So he's telling us to clean the doorknobs, clean the, we kind of go through the garage a lot, like in a specific path. So it's like clean that area-ish and other places we share. Clean the little thing on top of the hand sanitizer. Do what you can, especially when you ask yourself like, oh, what can I do during this time? Even if it's just washing your hands and that's all you can do and you feel like it's nothing, that's definitely something. So that's what you can do. And monitor yourself. That's also another thing, how am I doing today? Am I feeling a little hot? Just day to day to see, what's going on up here in the body. Oh, I forgot to change this picture. I don't know why I put that picture. If you're sick, and so obviously if you can stay at home, I know some people, they need to work, but you don't want to spread it to other people. So I can kind of, you're going to figure out a way, where there's a will, there's a way. So I can't just say stay at home because I know people need to work. You need to make money. You need to support your family. Obviously, you guys are kids, but I know like it could be like, oh, what about my parents, but I'm not going to say something so definite. Take care of yourself. Don't just like, oh, I have this, I'm going to die. Because there was another article that I read that the more you really believe in an idea, the more your body's going to start like, believing in it itself, because the mind is a really powerful thing. So try to take care of yourself mentally, obviously physically, what you can. Try to stay in a specific room so that way you don't like spread your scope of spread is small. There you go. Again, wear a mask, clean and disinfect, especially if you're sick. So like, again, if you're not limiting yourself to a room, or if you're not going crazy putting up plastic everywhere, trying to make a quarantine, if you're not going that far, try to figure out the areas where you're touching the most, and so that way you're okay, let me just grab my disinfectant wipes. So you just you already know what to do. Call first and seek medical help if symptoms become critical. Obviously it's how your body is at the moment and how kind of scarce tests can be. And if you're not too sick at the point, you don't want to aggravate it by going to a hospital with people that are already more sick. Because it can, again, the mind is a powerful thing. So if you see all these other people, it might further exacerbate your symptoms. And for more information, obviously check the CDC website. But try not to go too overboard with analyzing your symptoms on the web, because that's just a big old rabbit hole. Because literally you could look up, why am I coughing? And it says you're going to die. So don't do too much research into that. Okay, so I thought I had more on that, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And also another thing with COVID, I know it's kind of like preaching to the choir here, because you guys are pretty smart. Like when I saw you guys in person before this whole thing hit, it's just like, dang, they're already pretty smart. Why am I teaching them anything? Don't contribute to the biases for COVID-19, because I know before it was like, oh, every Asian person's gonna have it, because like, you know, like that whole stir crazy thing started. So with the protests and the racism and discrimination and COVID-19, this whole year kind of married all those things into one. So that's also something to be conscientious about. But again, you guys already know what's right and wrong. So next slide. What does it all mean? So from a Catholic perspective, or for yourself, or the ramifications of this whole stew pot of issues. So as a Catholic, you might ask yourself, is God asking us to step up for the past mistakes, like ownership of past, not your past mistakes? So maybe he is, you know, calling on the youth or the younger generation, because the older generation might not want to step up and take care of it. And not that they don't want to, but they think that they don't have the time, which, understanding their reasoning, but, you know, obviously we have different perspectives. So, yeah, again, is he calling on the younger generation to resolve this heavy burden? Do I need to check myself? You know, like, oh, I noticed that I'm having this implicit bias or stereotype already. You know, it's just some things you can think about as a Catholic, or yourself, if you know anyone that's not Catholic and you want to have this discussion with them. Ramifications. So for COVID, it could be like messing with the natural world if you want to get too deep into it. I know some people might think like, oh, it's because they were testing to see it, like testing animals to see if there was new diseases that we could be afraid of, researching, like, you know how like you hear like how far science has come and people are not okay with it. So it could, you know, be again messing with the natural order of things philosophically. It's just to get you thinking. And then obviously the ramifications of discrimination are evident in America. You see it in our legal system, our school system, our working classes, in every part. You see it in our cities. Look here, you can see it in South Dallas with just the zip codes, because you go in South Dallas at the Martin Luther King Center, and then you go to the farmers market, there's a distinctual difference, and they're not that far apart. So let's see. Well, it's not even that far apart, because this Fair Park is right there next to the MLK Center, and it's drastically different. You see all these people going over there that are not part of the community, but then it's very like, wow, like the difference. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the verses. So can someone read this verse for me, please? Anyone?
I will.
Okay.
Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar.
Yes, that was from John 1:420. And that is, again, if you like type in like the different verses that come from the Bible on this, it's pretty clear. But it's interesting enough when you read into the history of slavery and the reasoning behind it, people also use biblical references to support it. And it's just like, when I was researching, I only saw like maybe like 3 that really supported that ish. And it's, you have to really ask for the wisdom of Solomon and like really do you know, get more in tune with your spirituality and the Bible. So when things like that come around, your faith is not shaken. Like you're like, yeah, it does say that, but it also says this, like the real message behind it. Okay, can someone else please read this?
You want me to read again?
Yeah, I guess.
Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
Yes. Psalm 23:4. And obviously, again, this is one of the more popular verses. And I thought it can be applicable, well, to anything really, but also to both COVID, the pandemic, and to the protests and racism that is very prevalent in our society. And just the more you cling to God and your faith, then the more you're going to find it clear with which path for you to follow and to deal with any issue that comes head on, even though it might not be easy at the time. Okay, next one. Anyone can read.
If not, I'm going to name someone.
I'm not that mean, Mom.
Romans 12:2. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think.
Yes, thank you. This is also another one that I really, really liked, because it's different when someone like tells you, oh, you should believe this and you should believe that. Like when you hear that, you automatically just want to walk away from the conversation, because it's not something you want to have to deal with. You know, you don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And so when you're asking God to transform you, that's coming from a divine place. Because trust me, when you ask for that, he's going to deliver, and not in the right way, not in the way you expect to or really want to. And so it's just, again, it can be applicable here and with COVID and the protests, but he's going to do it in a way that's applicable for you and your life. Obviously, he can't ask you to take the mantle and solve world hunger or racism and discrimination all in one day, but if he can really change your heart and help you get the wisdom of Solomon, then maybe you can have a ripple effect. You know, you could be the change, part of the change that needs to happen. No pressure though. Yeah, because God said that oh, okay, sorry. I was trying to read through my notes. So with this next video, I believe it's two priests talking about the issue. Like it's around the protest times, and it was uploaded around June. And so I'm gonna try to play some of it because it's long. But again, if you can't hear it, let me know. And if not, I'll just kind of, again, pick the...
Ready? Go.
Was it 8:25?
As far as listening, and then
okay.
How can we sort of publicly respond? What do I do? Where do I take this? How do I bring the Lord into this in my life?
Yeah. And once again, if you're not in the shoes, if you don't understand what's going on, then like it's very difficult to actually like positively do something. So we just celebrated Pentecost, and there was something beautiful about Pentecost where the church is one. You know, like it didn't matter what the language was spoken on the day of Pentecost, that everybody was understood. The idea is that we need the Holy Spirit, we need Jesus, we need God the Father to help us see our brothers and sisters in the light that He's created them in. And so a simple prayer that I love, that I oftentimes pray myself, I tell penitents to pray and stuff like that, is, Jesus, help me see what you see and feel what you feel, about this other person, specifically people you're struggling with. But maybe in this context, like, Jesus, help me see what you see and feel what you feel about, and you could say whatever it is that specifically you're struggling with, if there is some struggle in seeing this whole issue from a specific way. And also too, just for us who need healing, us who've gone through difficulties, we could say, Jesus, help me see what you see and feel what you feel about myself. Like, speak the truth into that. Speak into that. What are you saying? What do you feel about me? And I think from there, once we're able to see it with God's eyes, once we're able to understand it from his perspective and his viewpoint, then we can actually positively do something or say something, or actually, come from a place of prayer, as opposed to just like spouting off the top of our heads and making things up that actually become more hurtful than actually helping.
Yeah, and I think to add to it a little bit, some of us we might be like, okay, whatever, like I'm not a racist, like I don't like, okay, I'm fine. But just to invite the Holy Spirit, if there's areas in my life where I'm acting out of prejudice and I'm not aware of it, is there anything, Lord? Just give the Lord permission to speak into your life and shine his light and enlighten your conscience, to just to clean house, to do a good examine, to see it, to let God shine the light on any dust in there that you're not aware of. I think is great. And I do think this is a time for intentionally praying into the area of racism.
Yeah.
It's not just another issue. It's an issue that we need to take a look at now. We can't just wait for the next new cycle and move on. But let's pray for social equality, pray for healing for those who've been hurt, pray for conversion for those who are hurting, and pray for truth and light for those who are still walking in darkness.
Right.
Listening.
Yeah.
So what does listening look like? How can we listen?
You can't properly listen unless you understand, or like you have some sort of knowledge of what's going on. And just don't focus on the one event or the one thing, or like be specific, but just understand that there's a history here. So specifically with the way African Americans are treated, like there's history of slavery, a history of how we've been treated in this country. And so it's not just the one event of George Floyd, as tragic as it is, it's not just that, but there's other events. It's not an isolated thing where, okay, because of this, we're gonna start writing and stuff like that. No, it's because of the years and just not being listened to, or just not just going through these different struggles that we have gone through. Like I have my own personal history of racism. This is where it's coming from. And so in order to listen, you have to take those things into account. You have to be able to somehow, okay, take a step back from my preconceived notions, my preconceived way of thinking about this, and having this background information, I'm going to enter into this conversation, enter into this whole reality, just blank slate, as far as like, I'm not going to think this is how the reaction should be, or this is how the response should be. But once again, understanding that there is a lot more to this than just George Floyd,
And again, it's an absolute tragedy, the death of George Floyd. But like we talked about, there's a history. And so part of listening, I think, is researching. Right. And so again, this is a time for active listening, active engagement. Do a little research into racism and civil injustice in our country, in your state, in the world. Active listening, or like really a deep listening, is don't allow your experience of the social inequality and the racism and the conversation today to be limited by the headlines. And we as Christians, we should be great at this, because we understand that, so there's a priest who does something bad, there's Christians who do something bad, and if somebody tries to reduce all of Christianity to what these other people are doing, which isn't in line with what we're standing for, like we're sort of insulted by that. So don't dismiss this conversation because a series of people who are making the most noise are doing stupid things. And so I think that's not listening if you're just picking up a few headlines. But my encouragement would be to really get into some articles, read some journals, read some blogs, watch some other videos where people of African American descent are sharing their experience. And it's not just the headlines. Try to be active in listening to the heart of the issue.
Right. Ask a friend, ask somebody who who struggle with this, like, hey, what's going on for you, type of thing, Like I want to understand what's happening. Not just like, I just want to understand what's going on. So let's talk about this,
So first we're going to prayer. We're deep listening, research, getting the history. We're deep listening by listening to what people are saying. We're listening through conversations with our friends or family. Can we publicly do something? What does that look like?
And this is just my 2 cents. I mean, there's a lot of things people could do, and just be creative as best you can to try to support. But I think once again, you have to do something. Like you have to say something. You have to just to show your support for people. If it's something where you prayed about it, you thought about it, you listened, and now, okay, I'm gonna do something, maybe simply posting something online, just posting like support for the African American community or condemning racism, but just to show something as far as like, hey, look, I'm not with this. This is not something I'm a part of. I don't want this to be a part of my society, for my children, for my people, my friends that are growing up in this. I don't want this to be a part of our society anymore, and so to actively, publicly say something, to take to social media and just to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're posting, when you're saying stuff, don't just, okay, just because I want to be on this or in this and like to kind of give that public idea, don't just say it to say it, but like if you're going to say it, mean it, like just actually put your heart into it and be honest, like, hey, look, this is what I think, this is what I mean, because nobody wants a half-hearted answer. Nobody wants a half-hearted thing to this, because that doesn't change things. That doesn't change, once again, the society or specifically the problem that we have in society with racism.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's really well said. I'm really grateful that you jumped on this.
Okay. So that was one video from a Catholic perspective. So again, like he said, don't focus on the bad things of a general movement. So again, like some people might focus on the rioting and the looting and stuff like that. So yeah, that is bad, like, stealing and whatnot. But if you just focus on that, it's not really little, but that aspect of the, social change, then that's probably one of the parts that makes it difficult to move forward. Yes, it's bad, but at the same time, you want to continue pushing for it because it's like, oh, here's a distraction, so you don't focus on the bigger picture. And another thing he said was, even if like, just posting something, I'm not going to force you to, obviously free will and whatnot, but I know that like, even though I had no money, I tried watching videos that contributed like funding to organizations that helped toward that cause. And like, I didn't even know that existed. So that's crazy. And the one that I did use, it went from like $500 to $20K. So something as simple as that you can help, then that's something you can do. Especially for people that got laid off. And so again, what they said that you can do is like research history about the issue, active listening, active conversation, pray. That's a big one. People might not think it's big, but he listens. Might not always be the answer that you want to hear, but he answers. And pray for a change of heart if needed. So the next video should talk about response to COVID with Father Mike Schmidt. Again, if you can't hear it, we'll bypass it.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmidt, and this is Essential.
Let's see where. I have to skip it a little bit.
It's one of those like,
so we can get
to
like
here's what the government is doing. Here's what the bishops are saying. It is so stinking easy for us to be armchair quarterbacks. Like it's so easy for us to be Monday morning critics, right? Because what do we have? We have the luxury of being able to criticize. We have the luxury of being critics, because whatever they do, whatever the bishops decide, whatever the government, with declaring that restaurants shouldn't be serving, declaring that gyms aren't open, places of public gathering more than 10 or 25 or 250 people, whatever the thing is, can't happen. Like, it's easier for us to sit back and say, that's an overreaction. Like, it's easier for us to be critics. We have the luxury of being critics because we don't have the responsibility of having to make a decision. And again, I've heard so many people criticize the bishops who are saying, we're not going to have masses publicly, saying they're being cowardly. Like, well, I don't know, or other bishops who are like we're having more masses, that they're being foolish. Like, I don't know that they are. I'm not sure that the bishops who are just heeding the recommendations of virologists are being cowardly. I think they're being wise. I don't know if the bishops who are saying we're having more prayer and more masses are being foolish. Maybe they're relying on the Lord. I think that it would be wise, maybe just not even charitable, but like wise for us to say, okay, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to be grateful that I don't have the responsibility of making the decision, because I don't know what I would choose. Because it's not just my life, right? I mean, you're a bishop. It's not just your life. It's not just this handful of people. It's every soul in your diocese you're having to make a decision about. And yes, you might survive something like this, but what if you made a decision that even cost the life of one person? That'd be a hard responsibility to have. And so maybe safe than sorry, right? So be grateful. And secondly, pray for them. Like intercede on their behalf. And not only on their behalf, this is the thing. With all of this, like in having quarantine and having like our restricted lives, our sphere of interest is like massive, right? Like I want to know why the bishop's saying this, or why the government say this, or who's doing what. Our sphere of interest is massive. But here we have to understand, our sphere of interest almost always vastly outstrips our sphere of influence. And our sphere of interest, what I want to know about, what I want to weigh in on, what I want to criticize sometimes even, far outstrips my sphere of influence. Like what I actually can do. Right now, in this kind of a situation, what can I do? Not just what can I criticize, what can I do? Not just how I can complain or point out where someone else has done something wrong or what I disagree with. What can I do? What is my sphere of influence? And maybe all I can do is I can wash my hands and I can pray. Maybe that's all I can do. But maybe what I can do is I can wash my hands and I can pray and I can reach out to that person who lives down the street, but even giving them a phone call or even just kind of stopping by. I can have social distancing. I can, we can level out the curve, right? But at the same time, like, how about paying attention to our sphere of influence rather than living in this place of sphere of interest? Because there's people in your life, there's people in my life right now that I actually can be in contact with. I can be in contact with them through the phone. I can be in contact with them through FaceTime or Skype or maybe even in person. Who knows? Why don't I do that? It's a luxury to be able to be a critic. And it is a massive responsibility to have to make a decision. Last three things. One is I want to make a note quick of how serious this is. What I mean by that is I know that illness is a real thing, and I know that some people who are listening or watching this, you already have people. Maybe you've gotten sick. Maybe someone you love has already died. Maybe you've lost someone. That's massively important. I know with the stuff about like restaurants closing and other kind of small businesses are being massively, incredibly affected. If that's your livelihood, you're in the service industry, like so affected. If you work in hospitals or in clinics and just like having to go to work and saying like, what am I doing in this moment? Am I exposing my friends and my family because I have to go to work, I have to take care of people. Just please know that what I can do is I can pray for you, and I am praying for you because that's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's really, some people it's like, oh, it's a little kind of a break, kind of a little adventure. Others it's, how am I going to pay my bills now? How can I make sure that my family is safe? And I completely understand that. I get that. Not to worry, not to give into fear.
Okay, so I wanted to put like actual priests in here because I know at least I know when I hear it from like someone that's like rahir in certain, areas of our lives, then I don't know, it just hits more deeper than as opposed to hearing it from a friend. I know that sounds bad, but and I feel like he can talk to youth better because he is a priest on a college campus. So with that, he said to keep praying, even if it's just washing your hands, those little things do matter. And even, again, like he said, try focusing on your sphere of influence, so reaching out to others, because you still can do that through Zoom, through phone calls, even just staying 6 feet and being like, hey, Chuck, how's it going across the street? I know, like, I see this random person walking his dog, and he's like, where's Tony? My dog, in case you can hear him. And yeah, he's just, just walking and saying hi, even though he's like hella far away. But yeah, sphere of influence, rather sphere of interest. And that also sparked another thing that I wanted to mention is that even in my the young adult or adult-ish youth group, my age group, one of the members, he started calling our group just to say hi, just to see how everyone was doing. And just by that, like, it sparked another member to do the same thing. And Anna actually on here, everyone know Anna? Yeah. I ended up talking to her for like 2 hours one time, and it just made me feel a whole lot better. It might seem weird to talk on the phone nowadays because you just text because it's easier. I get it. But maybe you might live somebody's day just by doing that. Maybe God is like nudging you to like, come on, call that person. Maybe not. I don't know. It's your life. So let's go to the next slide. Summary. So what did we learn today? What started the protests that people are still, protesting, and why it's important, the ramifications of it and the reasons for it, what the meaning of prejudice, discrimination, bias, stereotyping, the COVID-19 implications, how it affects our faith and what we can do to fight through it. Research history, active listening, active conversation, praying, talking to people, even through the phone, letting someone hear your voice. Because even in like incarceration, where they put them in like solitary, like some people end up having mental implications because they're like isolated for so long. So maybe someone might just need to hear you. Okay. This next part, I have 2 more slides. So open-ended questions. So I wanted this part to be kind of like a discussion if people wanted to talk about the issues. You don't have to, but in case people wanted to talk about it. So things you can think about. How am I being affected? Am I doing anything to fix an issue if there is one? I'm saying you do. What can I do about it? Do I have any biases? Implicit biases or stereotypes in the back subconsciously, How is God challenging me? Is he telling me, pulling me to step up, like to a vocation to help with this issue possibly-ish? So anyone wanted to contribute or talk about anything?
Amber, could I add something about masks and how to wear them properly? Okay. So what you want to do with your mask is once you get your mask, you want to fold it in half to where it's a tight crease. So then you get a tight seal when you wear it and there's no holes, because I know there's just a lot of people that just like they have it curved like that, and then they just slap it on, and then there's 2 like gaping holes right here. So if someone were to cough, it gets in your eyes, and then you start inhaling it. So it's best if you grab it, and then you fold it like that. You fold the tip of it, and then put it on. Then you have a tight seal, and it's a lot more comfortable. And then with your glasses, like the lens wouldn't be, like the fog, it wouldn't be open, so then the fog wouldn't get in your glasses. So once you have it, so when you have a tight seal, keep it like that, exhale, there's no fog. Life hack.
Oh my gosh, I've been struggling with that for so long. So it's like I have to go a little blind to when I put these masks on. So thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Everyone keep that in mind, please. Did anyone else want to mention anything? If not, then I will doing this in case anyone wanted to say anything. I'll go to the next video. But again, try to mull over these questions, just get your brain thinking. Because I know like being stuck at home, doing the same thing, doing the same chores can like be mind numbing. So if you keep thinking, Like it'll, you know, you got to exercise your brain muscle. It's just not about body, you know? Oh, sorry. These were references for the articles I was mentioning. Because I know some people, I don't know. I'm so used to it for college, you know, doing APA format. And I was like, you know, for this, I wanted to make sure, like, in case, you know, someone wanted to actually look at the articles. But this next video is more lighthearted because I know this topic is very heavy. It's like how you feel after eating a heavy meal. But yeah, it kind of goes over racism just a little bit, but it's more lighthearted. Can't see it? Let me know.
Hi, you mind if I eat here with you? Of course. So weird being the new kid. I'm Madison.
Oh, I'm Casey. Hi, I'm Ken.
So where are you from, Ken?
From San Francisco. I was at that branch for a little bit, just transferred down.
Where are you from, though?
If you're asking me where my family's from, China, I guess.
Cool, you're Chinese.
American.
Right, Chinese American. That's awesome. You know, I'm from the Midwest, and we're not the most culturally diverse part of the country, you know. Oh, I forgot my coffee at my desk. I'll be right back.
You believe this, girl? What?
Where are you from? Ooh, you're Chinese. So ignorant.
I mean, she honestly might not know much about your culture. It's true what she said. The Midwest isn't very diverse. I mean, trust me, I'm from Kentucky.
Oh, no way. That's cool. I don't think I've ever met anyone from Kentucky before. What are you guys called? Like Kentuckers, Kentuckets?
I think the proper term is Kentuckian.
Huh. You lived there your whole life?
Born and raised.
That's crazy. You have no accent.
Well, I just didn't pick one out.
How them grits, son?
What was that?
Kentucky's part of the South, right? That's my southern accent.
Well, not all of us speak like that. You
Oh
understand?
my gosh.
Okay.
Look what I'm having for lunch. Kentucky Fried Chicken. What a coincidence, huh? I bet you love this stuff, huh? Here, have some.
I actually don't eat it that often.
You know what? I just remembered. My roommate in college was actually from Kentucky. His name is Corey. Do you know Corey?
You want to know if I know Corey because we're both from Kentucky?
Uh-huh.
No, I don't know Corey.
Have you ever been to the Kentucky Derby?
I've never been to the Kentucky Derby.
But it's in Kentucky.
Yes.
So why don't you go?
That's true.
So, I was thinking, Ken, you must have been born here because you don't have any accent at all.
Okay, Madison. Just because I'm Chinese doesn't mean I have a Chinese accent by default, okay? It doesn't mean that I eat orange chicken and fortune cookies all the time. It doesn't mean that I know all your Asian friends. It doesn't mean I hang out in Chinatown every night. Why don't you go educate yourself, okay? Don't be so ignorant. Jeez.
Oh my...
Yeah.
I didn't mean for my questions to be offensive. I was just genuinely curious.
I just think that we can all be more culturally aware in the situation.
Just be more sensitive towards others.
Right. You know, I actually do really miss this stuff. Do you want some fried... I'm gonna throw it away.
Hey everyone, I hope you liked that sketch. It was actually based on a true story. I met a guy named Casey on set once.
Okay, so
And he was from
that is
Kentucky.
the end of the presentation. You guys are free to go. Laughter.
Wow.
I'm done.
So, thanks, Amber. That was
Oh, yeah, let me
great. That was awesome. And I hope, guys, you learned something about what really social justice or Catholic social teaching is all about. So, before we go, I just want to share this one. Okay. So, Mother Teresa said, was a saint. Saint Mother Teresa said, "I see God in every human being. When I wash the leper's wounds, I feel I am nursing the Lord Himself. Is it not a beautiful experience?" So what Mother Teresa, Saint Mother Teresa is trying to say is that everyone we see, even here with us in our Zoom meeting, we see God in them. May it be black, maybe it be Asian, may it be Hispanic. They're all God's creatures. We're all God's image and likeness. Um, I saw this. Uh, I saw this video in YouTube. It's actually, it's like a historical thing. So who knows the movie Gone with the Wind? It's really an old movie. Like I think it's the 1950s or 60s, somewhat like that. So the story is about uh well, this YouTube video is about this how racism, even on that movie, on that age, 1950s, 1960s, is still going on. There was an actress who is a black actress who who um who also starred on that movie Gone with the Wind, and her role was a slave, like a nanny or something. So they said it's like the typical, like the stereotyping African Americans would be at that time. But the story turned when, so it was the Oscars. All the actors, all the stars were there. But the sad thing was, it's all it's all the white actresses, but the blacks, what they say, the colored ones are just in one place. They're really segregated with that, segregated in that place. But the good thing was that black woman, um, received an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for that movie, and she was the first Black American, African American to receive that Best Supporting Actress Oscars. But still, sadly, racism is still there. So, as Catholics, as Christians, we are all asked by God to be just be as brothers and sisters to them, because as Saint Mother Teresa said, "Here I see God in every human being." When you see some people, if you see a poor guy, a poor man, a sick man, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, they're all in the image of God. There's a funny story about the creation. God made us by using clay, and then one time God made like a couple, or we can say like a dozen of people, put it in his oven. So some of the clay became white, like raw, like dough, like bread dough. So they were Irish. They became the Irish because their complexion is so white. Then the other clay became yellow. Maybe it's not that raw, so it became yellow, and it became like the Asians. Then there's the brownish ones, that means God burnt the clay. There goes the black ones or the brown ones. So God God gave us this ability or freedom, the free will, if we may say it, to love one another as He Himself loved us, because He is. When we see others, we see His image in like this. And as we close our night tonight, um we're gonna just, before we pray, we're gonna, what do we call this? Reflect on this. This is a prayer by Saint Teresa of Avila. And it says, Christ has no body now on earth but yours. No hands, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes with which Christ looks out his compassion to the world. Yours are the feet with which he is to go about doing good. Yours are the hands with which he is to bless us now. So Saint Teresa of Avila is telling us that even though we don't see Christ physically, God wants us to be the Christ to the other people, to the blacks, to the Hispanics, to the Asians, to the poor, to the marginalized, to the aged, to the disabled, all the people in the world, even each and one of us, we see God. Be Christ, be the hands of Christ, be the feet of Christ, be the eyes of Christ. And sometimes when we pray over the speakers of talks, we say, Lord, let your mouth be our mouth. Because Christ has no mouth now but yours. Christ has no hands now on earth but yours. And God, Christ has no heart now to love here on earth but yours. So that's our calling, guys. To be God's heart, to be Christ's body here on earth. So as we close, just some announcements. Next week, we're gonna have a prayer night. It's a praise and worship prayer night. So it's gonna have a praise and worship and prayer. So bring friends, invite more youth, invite more teens, even young adults. They're fine, they're good. Even college students, you can invite them. We're gonna pray prayers and sing praise and worship. Okay, so that's next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is the 22nd. Yeah, 22nd. Okay, so let's close now for prayer. Anyone wants to lead the prayer? Popcorn? Popcorn Edgar. Yeah. Edgar. Edgar. Where is he? Okay. Okay. Humera, lead the prayer. Lead the closing prayer, please.
Yeah, I totally got you. Okay. Hold on. Need to remember what you told us. Okay, hold on. Okay, I got this. Okay. I'm in a bathroom in the dark. Okay, concentration. All right. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for giving us this day. Thank you, Lord, for giving us the technology to do the talk, Lord. Thank you for giving us health, or at least giving me health. I don't know about everyone else, but at least thank you for I hope everyone is healthy, Lord. I pray that everyone will be okay, and that the cases will go down of the virus. I pray for the president, who I hope you give him some knowledge because he really needs it. I hope the country doesn't go to waste like it already has. I hope people can start listening about masks, Lord. I hope everyone really does okay and have a phenomenal week. Amen. Well, praise God. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, to the Holy Spirit, as was in the beginning, is now, and never shall be, world without end. Amen. All right, someone can speak now.
The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. Thank you, Amira. Thank you all. And see you Wednesday. Thank you, Amber. That was cool. It was awesome. Thank you for your talk.
Yeah.
See you Wednesday. Bye, guys.
All right, I'll see y'all.
Yep.
Wear y'all's masks. Bye.